So let's talk about alchemy and how Jung got into it. For before we get into formal thing, I do want to get heart-to-heart things out of the way so that some things don't stay unsaid. Um, that when he was in the mental hospital, working as a psychiatrist in Bergholtzi Hospital in Zurich, which is basically a huge, large state mental hospital, not unlike hospitals that I train in England. And But he was very curious about his patients. They were all psychotic, schizophrenics, manic depressives, locked up for the rest of their lives. And he was not happy with just containing their illness. He wanted to go under the hood of what was really going on, what was the mystery of the madness. And so he started to do experiments with his patients, word association experiments. So right from the start, Jung was curious about what is going on behind the scenes under the hood of consciousness. And so began his journey into alchemy, because he wanted to know more. He wanted to go into the vertical axis, what was going on in the psyche. And of course, the rest is history. After that, he discovered that there were complexes which are there since people are growing up. Some of the complexes we have come from transgenerational trauma and karma and so forth. And some of the complexes we have are collective complexes, have nothing to do with us. We are just born with them. We are carrying the burden, the wounds and the gifts of the collective. So that became his journey into alchemy. And then his second deep dive into alchemy was when he broke up with Sigmund Freud and wanted to understand more of the dynamics of the breakup. What was the mystery? What separated these two great scholars and psychologists? And then, of course, that dive into his own inner world is well chronicled in the Red Book, which some of you have eyeballed. Otherwise, it's worth at least eyeballing it once. And if you get intrigued to read more about it, and read it to begin with, and then read about it, how people have analyzed it. So then he came up with beautiful mandalas and symbols. He didn't understand them, but he knew that he was onto something. We probably will not talk much about the alchemy of the Red Book for today, but I want to just let you know. So that was his next foray into the mystery of alchemy. Then he came up with a very interesting mandala in 1928 as he was working on Red Book. And synchronistically, he got a gift from his good friend, Wilhelm, what was his name? Richard. And he gave him this book, Secret of the Golden Flower, right here, by Richard Wilhelm. And the Secret of the Golden Flower, in it, had an image which was identical almost to the last image, mandala that Jung did in his Red Book. And this is it. You can see it right here. Some of you live, I'll also show you on the camera in a minute. And this was his aha moment. He knew that he was not crazy, that some of his ideas had resonance in the collective culture. So he stopped writing Red Book because now he knew the answer. And after this, of course, he did a wonderful commentary of the Secret of the Golden Flower, which is in one of the collected works. We will talk about it a little bit. And then started the next stage of his alchemic work. He started to go deeper into alchemy, and there was a dream which instructed him into why he needs to go into it. And he collected his own, based on the dream and synchronicity of this particular image, he started to collect alchemic books. And he had the largest collection of alchemic books in Europe, even now. It has been replicated in New York and so forth. And some of you might want to get this book. Let me get it for you. Jung's biography in books. And this image you see is part of his alchemic collection of Jung's personal library. And there's a beautiful section in this book on Jung's, how he collected this library and what material he had in this library and how it inspired some of his ideas. So that became the next phase of his alchemic work. After he had finished a number of things, he went much deeper into alchemy, and he had a near-death experience in 1942 or 43 when he almost died after he came back from India. He had a chronic deep vein thrombosis, and he had a near-death experience. His doctor gave his family that he has probably 6 weeks to live. But of course, he had a beautiful image. He went up there. He saw the white lights at the end of the tunnel. He was glad he was done with all this karmic life and happy to be with a divine kind of merger with the divine. And then he was instructed in this dream that his work was not yet done, that he must return to this world to finish his work before he can be permitted into, the afterworld. So reluctantly, he came back. And for the rest of his life, the last 20 plus years of his life, 40, 61, so about 20 plus years, he continued to work on alchemy and wrote a number of books, which we have here. We will be talking about these and excerpts from these books. The last 4 or 5 books of his lifetime were all on alchemy. His last masterpiece was Mysterium Conductionis, an unfinished masterpiece. And of course, we'll be reviewing a summation of the findings in that in our presentation today. And there was a companion book which he wanted to finish, but was almost running out of time. And it needed translation from Latin. So he asked his colleague, Marie-Louise van France, to complete the book, which I have here. Let's see. It's called Aurora Consurgent. All of you can have a look. Yeah, you can eyeball these books in tea break. Yeah, right here. And it's a beautiful alchemic treatise on a manic depressive monk. And it's a wonderful read. It's a heavy read, but if you stay with it, it's handsomely rewarding. Like everything Jung, you really need to stop trying to understand it at the first go. You only get it after third or fourth sweep at the material and so forth. So that was that book. Let's see. I will be referencing books that you might want to collect in your personal collection as you go, as you get deeper into alchemy yourselves. Books are friends. I am, of course, a book addict, but even if you're not, I think they are very good friends. And they become companions in your own inner work and, of course, in your own alchemic opus. So I have now, because I can't afford to get all of them, I get them from used bookstores, ABA Books and others. If you go to Amazon and click on a book, they say used book options, and they are wonderful. So you must look at that. And I have collected many of the books. I send them to India to my students and collect after collecting them. So I have 2 or 3 copies, and I send the rest of them every shipment every year or two to India training programs. So that gives you a little bit of history of alchemy. Of course, you must read Memories, Dreams, and Reflections. There's a beautiful section on alchemy in that, which we maybe touch upon today. And of course, the other books is Psychology and Alchemy, which is volume 12. Then there is Alchemic Studies, volume 13. And of course, the volume 14 is Mysterium Conductionis, which is, of course, his last unfinished masterpiece. So those are the books that contain most of Jungian material. Of course, in between all this, he got into a wonderful collaboration with well-known physicist, Wolfgang Pauli, and he was not his patient. He consulted Jung for analysis, but Jung said, well, you're too interesting. I want to study you, not analyze you. So he sent Pauli to one of his younger colleagues for analysis with the condition that all his dreams be available to Jung to study. And of course, he studied those dreams, which became a sort of a treasure of Jungian matrix. And we will be discussing those dreams and how they reveal collective archetypal symbols and how we can access those same symbols in our dreams. So I think that's the idea This is a book. This, of course, is the image of a dream vision that Polly had of the world clock, a beautiful image. And we will be unpacking this particular dream image during our meeting today. So those are highlights of what we will be trying to attend to during our meetings. Okay. So the first, and then of course, if I am a little too ambitious as usual in what I hope to present, but we'll do the best we can. So let's see, let's get this out of the way. So alchemy, as you know, is about to study how to make gold out of lead, meaning how to move something from lower consciousness to higher consciousness symbolically. Each one of us has lead in our personality. And how to transform that lead into gold is the central theme of alchemy. So that's basically what alchemy is, to transform something into its higher essence. Now, Jung was inspired by that in his readings of Nietzsche and his works in Thus Spoke Zarathustra, in which the philosopher talks about the concept of Übermensch, or higher self, which of course was appropriated and assimilated by Nazis in their propaganda, but it was never meant to be that. Of course, that was because his sister was a Nazi and a collaborator of Hitler, and sold his materials to Hitler's system, and they, of course, misused it. But what Übermensch means is for each one of us to become the Uber, the highest version of our potential. That is what Übermensch concept means. And in a way, Jungian work is about claiming that Übermensch, that Uber self, to be the best version of Ethan or David or Tom or Hetty that you can be. When you can do that, then of course, you have to make a journey into that alchemic space. Now, of course, the alchemists tried to do this in a literal sense. They took lower substances and tried to make them into higher substances, into gold and such. They never quite made gold, although they made quite a few strides in chemistry and so forth. But what they did at the same time was to project their psychic processes onto the opus, into the work. The ideas they used to transform lead into gold had some common features. All alchemists had some common themes that they used to make the transformation. And Jung had reviewed several thousand books and created his own personal index of these terms and came up with a composite of few common operations that are used in alchemic work. And that is how we have the operations of alchemy. Now we know the common themes of how to create that alchemic space and alchemic operations. So that is the whole idea of alchemy, is how to get into that space. Now, so basically it has two goals. One is to transform the lower material lead into gold, and then create a universal elixir, a formula of better life, higher life. And the second is to transform what was in alchemist's soul into matter. So they were trying to capture soul and get it into matter, but the real goal was they inadvertently to find the soul in the matter. So they tried to form a bridge between matter and psyche, matter and soul. And so the things they came up with became the essence of alchemic process. So they choose elements which are opposites of each other, because the maximum energy can be created when opposites are brought into alignment. If you put water in water, it's got no energy. But if you put some substance which is solid in water, then there is a dissolution. See if it melts or not, or what will it take to make it melt. When you can't melt that substance, then you put something, add something to it to make it melt. And what you add to it becomes sort of your contribution to the alchemic space. So it's a beautiful concept to bring about that conjunction till you create a new substance. So the process is repeated many times till you get to what you want to do. So that is how our life is. We try something new, something different when we have a life problem. Things don't work. We keep trying until we get the right formula. And that is what happens in life. People have bad marriages and they think, it's the other person's fault, but they keep remarrying person who's basically a clone of the original person till they realize at some point that it is not the other, but I must transform myself. And so they start to then come to this new insight that I must be the change. So the process is repeated many times till you get the formula right. So that is the alchemic way. So let's keep going with some ideas here.